Secretary of SoCal Martial Law Alerts, and you are?
Michael Teixeira, candidate for sheriff.
Awesome, for SLO County. Thank you so much for letting us come over and interview you. I know we're kind of a small outfit, shall you say.
I appreciate grassroots, so I have no problem with that at all.
Absolutely.
Absolutely not, I would not. And the sheriff is kind of the last protector of your constitutional rights.
Yes.
And unfortunately, many sheriffs have forgotten that. And because our rights have been eroded a little bit at a time, we don't notice it. If you were to go back 100 years, I don't think they would recognize how the Constitution is being interpreted today as opposed to 100 years ago. So to answer the question, the sheriff is the last bastion of protecting your constitutional rights, and mine too.
Yes.
I would like to say I would be able to recognize them, very easily, but it's not that simple. Some of them are almost coded in the way that they come into play. For example, I just got an email that the California legislature just passed in the Assembly, I believe it was, a law that will make it illegal for open carry of an unloaded firearm in California. Well, that's an erosion of our constitutional rights. So that's a law that, to me, is not enforceable. Well, it shouldn't be enforced because it's against the Constitution. Like any other training, you have to train people to understand the law, know what's expected of them, and know how the sheriff's department is going to operate. Now, I think the deputies are probably fairly well aware of what the rules are. It's just getting the backing from the top to allow them to do what they feel is right. I will if the other agencies are amenable to the joint training. Absolutely, you can't force other agencies to train, but I would certainly love to spread the word to other law enforcement agencies. No, I would not do that. And the Constitution is very clear about the separation between the military and law enforcement. So I wouldn't step across that line. Absolutely not. In fact, I had, although I wasn't directly involved in this, during Katrina, the Highway Patrol sent 200 officers to Louisiana, and they sent air operations assets. And I was working in air operations at the time. And I didn't know that this was going on at the time, but when the guys came back, they said that FEMA had instructed them to, not the Highway Patrol personally, but law enforcement in general, to confiscate people's firearms, regardless, for no reason at all, just other than it was a disaster and take their firearms, which is a clear infringement of the Constitution.
How would you resolve the conflict of unconstitutional orders that might be given within the context of training?
Well, I'm not sure how that plays out. You can't attend, as a sheriff, you can't attend every training that the deputies go to. So you kind of have to equip them, arm them, educate them with the rules in general before they go. And that would be the only way that we could do it in this venue, because of the size of the department. It's, they have about 150 deputies, and so you can't go with them to every training.
Would you assist and or support any foreign troops on American soil?
Oh, absolutely not.
How do you feel about the fact that in the event of a national emergency, Presidential Defensive Directive PD 51, have you heard of it before?
No, I have not.
No. Okay. Would in effect make the president sole ruler of the U.S.? I can send you a copy of that.
I would like one. And just based on what you've said, the president does not have the authority to take control of local law enforcement, especially the sheriff. The sheriff is the highest elected law enforcement official, and nothing in the California Constitution or nothing I've ever read in the United States Constitution gives the president authority over a local law enforcement agency. Well, the radios they still go through local dispatch ability, so I don't really see that as such a major problem. It's the interpretation of the orders that are more of the problem. It's not the method of communication, it's whether or not we are following those orders blindly, or whether we interpret them through the Constitution, which I would insist on, that we interpret them through the Constitution. If it comes down to a point where accepting the money allows them to tell me what to do with it or how to use it, absolutely I would refuse it. Not all warrantless searches are illegal. So to answer the question, legal warrantless searches, for example, searches incidental to arrest are legal without a warrant. I would allow those. But illegal warrantless searches, I would certainly not allow. In fact, coming from the Highway Patrol, for a very long time, we had department policy against making probable cause searches, where there was no arrest, but just probable cause search. And there's some very positive things in that type of a policy. So you can, at a law enforcement agency, you can, what's the right word? It's not define legality, but assist officers in staying legal by having department policy that gives them direction in those cases. So to answer your question, no, I would not support warrantless searches that were illegal, that weren't under some of the exceptions that allow them. Yes and no. No, I would not do it, other than there are some incidences where you would actually be required to by California law. For example, if you're arrested for DUI and you request that, and you take a breath test and then you request another test, well, any sample of urine or blood has DNA in it. And that's actually a requirement for the defense of people to do. So other than those exceptions, no, I would not.
Are you aware that already such information is already being kept in databases and has been collected without court order since 1976? They've been taking blood from infants since 1976.
That I didn't know, but I knew there were storages of DNA sample for other ones. I didn't know they were going
They've been collecting blood samples from every person born in a hospital since 1976.
Wow. Kind of says something to be born at home.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's another reason why it's coming back.
Yeah.
How would you seek to protect citizen privacy in an environment where such search and seizure abuses are already commonplace?
That's a tough question to answer. One is how you access it, is making sure that if you access those databases that you have legal justification to access them, not in just a fishing expedition. But since those databases aren't controlled by the Sheriff's Department, other than something local like that, I don't see how you would control it. And in this county, they're very sensitive to that. The county just had to pay, I think, $20,000 for some marijuana that was seized for a person who had a marijuana prescription, and that they destroyed. So absolutely, it's important that if evidence is seized and then later it's decided or it's determined that it wasn't legally seized or that the case isn't going to be prosecuted, it should be returned to the owner.
Are you aware that there are like scanners and such forth?
Yeah, that's part of the Patriot Act. All that stuff came out of the Patriot Act. And there are certainly times when it's beneficial to use to find people who are lost, things like that. But to just routinely track people, no, I would not. I will not use it for routine tracking. If there is a legal nexus to do it, then I will do it. For example, recently, just before I retired last May, but before I retired, we were able to track a guy that was wanted for domestic violence via cell phone. So I would use it for things like that.
In a state of emergency, will you allow federal orders which may include detainment of American citizens and the confiscation of their firearms and other property?
No.
In a state of emergency, would you act to disperse any assembly of citizens freely expressing their First Amendment right?
No.
Is political dissent a crime, even if Congress and the White House say so?
No. I would not honor or follow the directions of those types of things because I don't think they're constitutional. So I would resist those types of orders.
Yes. And
well, the sheriff's department has a lot of communication assets, so I would certainly use those to spread the word of how we're interpreting this, and not necessarily following the federal government's direction as to whether it's martial law. I mean, there are times when martial law is a valid thing, as long as it's declared at the right level. For example, if there's a national disaster, an earthquake or something like that may be necessary. But there's a mechanism for it, and it shouldn't be declared at the federal level. It should be declared locally.
And for a specific amount of time.
Yes, and probably a very short amount of time, not months. You know, I'm thinking a matter of days, something like that. So. No. I don't think it's legal to do that to a citizen. It's not constitutional to do that to a citizen. Yes. Yeah. I have not read his book, but I've been to his website and read many of his video interviews, or watched many of his video interviews.
Okay.
Yeah.